August 25th, 1944. Port of Cherbourg, Normandy, France, Sergeant Louis Lou. Mercer wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of a greasy hand. The summer heat clung to everything. Skin, metal, uniforms. It was just past 0600 hours, and the port of Cherbourg was already alive with the grind and growl of engines. Behind him, the sound of boots slapping against concrete echoed. Hundreds of men, many black, some white, all young, climbing into trucks. Lou stood in front of one of them, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the logo stamped into the metal above the grille. GMC, not General Motors Corporation. Not anymore. To these men, to these truck drivers, those letters meant something else. Gas, meals, and convoys, joked Private Andre Slim Carter the night before. Grit, muscle, and courage, someone else had said. But for Lou Mercer, a 38-year-old, or a 30-year-old diesel mechanic from Birmingham, Alabama, the letters now meant survival. They were about to attempt what many believed was impossible: to keep General George S. Patton's Third Army fueled, fed, and moving across 400 miles of torn, cratered French countryside. The Allied armies were breaking out fast after Operation Cobra, and the war was shifting. But this victory, Lou knew, came with a price. And the cost was measured in fuel, food, ammo, and tires that never stopped turning. What nobody here could have guessed, not even Lou Mercer, with his years in the pits and grease yards, was that this awkward-looking truck, once ridiculed by the British Army, was about to become the most essential vehicle in Europe. It was called the CCKW, though most men just called it the Jimmy, or the Deuce and a Half. It had 6 wheels, a canvas cab, and a rattling engine that sounded like it might cough itself to death at any moment. Lou had seen the old reports. Back in 1940, British officers had tested an early version of the truck, the ACKWX, and hated everything about it. Too long for French roads, too weak to carry full loads. Too American, they had said. That last one had made Lou chuckle when he first read it. What did too American even mean? Too simple? Too ambitious? Whatever the British thought, they dumped most of the trucks onto the Soviets under Lend-Lease. Some never saw battle at all. Some were lost in the Arctic Sea on convoys that never made it to Murmansk, but Lou had faith in this truck. He'd been working with them since '41, when General Motors rolled out the new model, the CCKW. It had a beefier engine, better torque, and a more balanced suspension. It wasn't pretty. Hell, it was loud, clunky, and prone to overheating in the summer. But it had something no British truck did. It could be built fast. It could be fixed anywhere. And it kept going. That morning, Lou stood with his tool belt slung around his waist as Captain Elijah Trent, the logistics officer from 514th Quartermaster Truck Company, made his rounds. Trent was a tall, wiry man from Kansas who believed in maps and math more than fate or faith. "We're looking at a minimum of 200 miles each way, Lou," he said, voice clipped and dry. "And the Krauts aren't our biggest problem anymore. It's fuel, roads, time," Lou nodded. "And brakes. Ain't no stopping 6,000 trucks on muddy roads without 'em." Captain Trent cracked a rare smile. "Then make sure they stop, and start again." Lou turned back to his truck. Private Carter, Slim, was already in the cab, fiddling with the radio and grinning like he was headed to a dance instead of a war. "Hey, Sarge," Slim called down. "Think this old junk wagon's gonna make it to Paris?" Lou didn't look up. He was checking the oil, listening to the hiss of pressure valves. "Only if you keep both eyes open and that mouth shut," Slim laughed. "Roger that." By the end of that week, they'd be halfway to Reims. By the end of that month, they'd deliver more than 12,000 tons of supplies per day. And by the end of October, the CCKW, the truck the British called worthless, would go down in history as the beating heart of the Red Ball Express. What no one said out loud, what every man thought but didn't speak, was that without these trucks, without these drivers, the war might still be lost. Lou Mercer didn't have medals. He didn't need them. He had wrenches. He had calloused hands. And he had 6,000 trucks to keep alive. August 27, 1944. Somewhere on the Red Ball route south of Saint-Lô, France. The rain came without warning. Not a soft drizzle, but a hard, slashing downpour that turned the broken roads of Normandy into a nightmare of mud and sliding tires. Sergeant Lou Mercer wiped his fogged glasses on his sleeve, already soaked through, and shouted over the engine's roar. "Carter, downshift! Don't let her slip!" Private Slim Carter gripped the wheel tighter, his knuckles bone-white, eyes straining through the warped windshield. "Already did, Sarge. But this road ain't no road. It's a goddamn river." The CCKW truck, loaded with 5 tons of 105mm shells, swayed like a drunk man on ice as its tires fought for traction. Behind them, 4 more trucks followed in staggered formation. Their headlights dimmed under blackout conditions, barely visible in the storm. It was 305 hours. They had been driving non-stop since 9:30 the previous morning, and they weren't even halfway. To the depot near Chartres, somewhere in the woods to the east. Lou swore he heard distant artillery. The Germans were still holding pockets along the Seine. But the real battle wasn't against guns. It was against logistics, against gravity, against time. Just 48 hours earlier, back at Cherbourg, Captain Trent had laid it out plain. Third Army's tanks need 400,000 gallons of fuel per day. We've got 2 rail lines down, and the Mulberry port's overloaded. If we don't move this stuff by truck, Patton's offensive stops cold. So they created the Red Ball Express, a name borrowed from American railroads, slapped onto hastily painted signs across war-torn France. 2 routes, 1 direction each. No stops, no questions. Just keep them rolling. And so, they rolled. Now, Lou leaned out the passenger window, the wind slicing across his face. A convoy jeep had pulled off the road just ahead. Hazard flags up. Lou slapped Slim's arm. "Pull up beside him." They stopped just long enough for Lou to jump down, his boots squelching in ankle-deep mud. He jogged to the jeep, where a young white MP, barely 20, with a pistol that looked too big for his belt, flagged him down. "Got a wreck up ahead," the MP shouted through the rain. "One of yours." Truck rolled into a ditch near the bridge crossing. "Casualties?" "Driver's alive, barely. Co-driver's dead. Fuel tanker." "We need help dragging it out before someone lights it up." Lou didn't hesitate. "Give me 10 minutes. I'll get a winch on it." He ran back, soaking wet, breath short, and jumped onto the back of the 2nd CCKW in line. Inside the bed, Corporal Clarence Peanut Johnson, a quiet mechanic from South Carolina with fingers like piano keys, was already halfway into a toolbox. Lou nodded. "We got a tanker in the ditch. Come on, Peanut. Let's save a damn miracle." The 2 men grabbed cables, a portable jack, a pair of lanterns, and a spool of thick steel chain. They loaded it all onto truck number 4, the wrecker variant, and pulled out ahead of the convoy. When they found the wreckage 15 minutes later, it was worse than Lou expected. The tanker was nose first in the ditch, the cab crushed against a stone wall. The co-driver, a young black soldier with a bloodied jacket and no pulse, was half hanging out the shattered windshield. The driver, dazed and bleeding, sat on the ground nearby, cradling his own broken wrist. Lou's stomach turned, but he didn't stop. "Peanut, chain her up on the rear axle. Don't touch the fuel tank. Could be leaking." The wind howled. Lightning cracked somewhere above them. And in that moment, with death hanging on a spark, Lou Mercer understood something deep in his bones. This wasn't just about moving supplies. This was about keeping men alive. He looked back at the trucks waiting on the road. engines idling, tires steaming. The CCKWs looked ugly, battered, outdated. But they were still moving, still carrying 5 tons each, still doing the work no fancy tank or shiny airplane could ever do. And right now, on this dark, wet, miserable French road, September 9th, 1944, Meaux, France. The sky over Meaux looked bruised. Dark clouds gathering like fists above the narrow village streets. Somewhere far off, the thunder of artillery rolled like an angry memory. But closer, in the muddy motor yard behind the 514th's temporary depot, the real tension was brewing. Sergeant Lou Mercer stood in the center of it, flanked by 6 angry men. Fuel rations were gone. Again. Private Theo McDaniel, the young Newark kid with a voice too loud for his own good, was shouting now. We run missions back and forth through Krautland. We get shot at, starved out, and now they telling us we don't get no gas? That ain't just a mistake, Sarge. That's a message. Lou held up a hand. Lower your voice. I'll lower it when they stop treating us like mules. Theo snapped. You know damn well the 336th got topped off this morning. I saw 'em loading up, laughing while we waited in the mud. The rest of the men murmured, fists clenched, faces bitter. Corporal Peanut Johnson said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. Slim Carter leaned against a busted CCKW, arms crossed. They don't want us out there no more. That's what this is, Lou exhaled slowly, jaw tight. He knew what they were all thinking. The convoy commanders were prioritizing white units, cutting fuel allocations to black companies under the excuse of vehicle rotation. They said it was a shortage. But it always seemed to be their trucks that ran dry first, their drivers who were left waiting, their men who risked the most and were thanked the least. An hour earlier, Lou had stood face to face with Captain Miles Broderick, the Red Ball route coordinator for the sector, a man who treated paperwork like gospel and soldiers like spare parts. Lou had stepped into his tent, hat in hand, respectful but firm. Captain, my unit is down to 1/8 of a tank across 3 trucks. If we don't get fuel now, we miss our delivery window to Reims. Broderick didn't even look up from his clipboard. Fort Worth was already issued fuel 2 days ago. That load went to the previous run. We ran double time. I've got wounded evac, ammo, and field med kits scheduled for departure at 1800 hours. Broderick clicked his pen, then looked Lou square in the eye. Then maybe you should plan better next time, Sergeant. Lou didn't respond. He just turned and walked out. But something had snapped. Now, in the motor yard, Theo took a step closer. You tell us to trust the mission, to keep rolling. But we ain't stupid, Sarge. We see what's happening. They'll use us till we break, then leave us dry. Lou's voice was low, but sharp enough to cut glass. You think I don't know? You think I ain't been passed over, disrespected, fed lies since I put this uniform on? Silence. But you listen here, he said, pointing toward the row of battered trucks. Those Jimmies over there? They don't care what color you are. They don't care who salutes who. They care about one thing, moving. And if we don't move, men die. You hear me? Peanut finally spoke, quiet and firm. We hear you, Sarge. But we also hear the silence when we call for help. At that moment, a horn blared from the depot gate. A supply jeep rolled in. And in the back, 3 gasoline drums marked diverted in white chalk. Lou walked over slowly. A wiry white corporal jumped down. Got rerouted fuel here. Orders say it's a misfiled drop, meant for the 336th, but he shrugged. They're full up already. Lou blinked once. You offering it to us? Corporal smirked. I'm dropping it here 'cause I ain't driving it back. He turned and walked away. Lou looked at the drums, then back at his men. No one spoke. They all knew what this was. Leftovers, scraps, charity disguised as accident. Still, Theo was the first to move. He grabbed a hose and started siphoning. The others followed, silent, angry, but moving, because at the end of the day, they couldn't run on pride. Only gasoline? At 18:05 hours, Lou climbed back into the cab of his truck. Slim sat behind the wheel, engine humming. "You still believe in this system, Sarge?" Slim asked. Lou looked out across the yard. The trucks lined up again, dented but ready. The men quiet, shoulders squared. "I believe in the man beside me," he said. "The rest of it? Hell, we make it work ourselves." Slim grinned, just a little. "That's enough for me." They pulled out in formation, 5 trucks deep, carrying crates marked, "Medical priority, do not delay." No escort. No MP support. No backup if things went south. But they had engines. They had grit. And they had each other. The CCKWs rolled into the deepening dusk, engines growling. And once again, the forgotten trucks carried the war forward. September 13, 1944, temporary Army fuel depot. Reims, France, 22:10 hours. The wind cut sharp that night, whistling between rows of fuel drums and shattered crates. The depot at Reims was an ugly sprawl of half-built canvas tents, trucks coughing smoke, and soldiers who moved like ghosts, overworked, underslept, and stretched to the edge of breaking. Sergeant Lou Mercer stood by his truck, arms folded, watching as Private Slim Carter fueled up under a flickering overhead lamp. Slim glanced up. "Cold out tonight." Lou didn't answer. His mind wasn't on the weather. Earlier that evening, a white officer from headquarters, Major Patrick Rudd, had pulled Lou aside. "Clean uniform. Too clean. Smelled of pressed paper and brandy." The kind of officer who'd never spent a night under a truck fixing a busted axle with nothing but a wrench and prayer. "Sergeant Mercer," he'd said, eyes narrow behind polished glasses. "We've identified suspicious behavior among several colored drivers. Reports suggest contraband, possibly sabotage, cigarettes missing, crates gone, black market trading, and some, let's say, irregular attitudes." Lou had stared at him. "Irregular?" Rudd hadn't blinked. "You'll begin collecting names, reports. Any driver with questionable conduct, we need flagged, immediately." Lou's face stayed still. "Sir, with respect, my unit's been on the road 18 hours a day. The only thing they've been stealing is sleep." Rudd had leaned in. "I'm not asking for opinion. I'm giving you orders." And just like that, Lou was dismissed. Not even a handshake, just a nod, as if he were some tool to be used and shelved again. Now, hours later, standing by the CCKW's hood, that order still rang in Lou's head like a bad echo. Collect names. Flag your own men. Like hell. Inside one of the tents, Corporal Peanut Johnson sat on an ammo crate, quietly stitching a torn canvas side panel. Private Theo McDaniel was pacing nearby, muttering. "I heard 2 more from the 390th got pulled, accused of theft. No court-martial, just gone. You think they'll try that on us next?" Peanut didn't look up. "Depends who they make report it." Theo stopped. "You think Sarge would sell us out?" Peanut didn't answer. He didn't have to. The air around them said enough. By midnight, the 514th had new orders. They were being sent east, beyond the main routes, to deliver fuel to a forward artillery battery that had advanced without support. The roads were exposed. German patrols had been reported in the woods. No MP escorts were available. It was, in every sense, a suicide run, but the order was stamped and sealed. Slim climbed into the truck cab and stared ahead. "They know damn well this is a death march." Lou climbed in beside him. "Yeah, they sent the colored unit because we're expendable." Lou didn't deny it. "They think we'll fall apart," he said. "They want to break us, prove we're not reliable." Slim looked at him. "So what do we do?" Lou slid his M1 carbine beside his seat and tightened the laces on his boots. We make the run. We finish the job, and we make damn sure they remember who kept the guns firing. 2 hours later, under blackout conditions, 5 trucks from the 514th rolled east. No maps, no backup. Just instinct and engine rumble. The road turned bad almost instantly, cratered and narrow. One truck blew a tire on a rusted mine casing. No injuries. Lou made the call. Strip the fuel. Leave the truck. Keep rolling. By Aero 300 hours, the remaining 4 CCKWs crept through a ravine. Trees loomed on either side, branches clawing at the canvas. Then they heard it. Pop, pop, pop. Gunfire. The truck in front of Lou's jerked sideways. A front tire shredded. Ambush! Someone shouted. Muzzle flashes sparked from the tree line. German stragglers, 5, maybe 6, opened fire with rifles. Not trained snipers, just desperate men who'd rather die shooting than starve hiding. Peanut Johnson returned fire with the 50 cal. His bullets ripped through the trees, and 2 figures dropped. Lou leaned out the cab, sighted his carbine, and fired twice. 1 round hit. He saw a body slump. Then, silence. The firefight lasted only 30 seconds, but it felt like a lifetime. 2 drivers wounded. 1 truck lost, but the rest? Still moving, Lou yelled back to the men, "No stops! No delays! Roll!" They left the wreck behind and carried on. At 05:10 hours, the sun broke weakly over the ridge, and there it was, the artillery battery. Cold. Hungry. Low on shells. The crew cheered when they saw the trucks coming. "We thought you boys got hit," the battery sergeant yelled. "We did," Lou said, "but the gas is here." That morning, as the drivers sipped bad coffee from dented canteens, Lou sat on a folding stool, rubbing a torn blister on his palm. Theo came up slowly. "Sarge, I said some things the other day." Lou looked up. "So did I," he said. "It's war. We all bleed the same," Theo nodded. "But you stood up for us." Lou shook his head. "I didn't stand up for you. I stood up for the truth. And the truth is, without these trucks, without you men, Patton don't move. The guns don't fire, and this war drags into next year." He paused. "And I'll be damned if I help them tear us apart from the inside." That night, Lou sat under the stars beside a warm engine block, writing a letter he never thought he'd write, addressed not to home, but to Command HQ. Addressed not to home, but to Command HQ. He named no drivers, reported no suspicions. Instead, he wrote 5 pages detailing every successful delivery, every run made without escort, every ambush survived, every life saved by the men of the 514th. At the bottom, he signed it. Respectfully, Sergeant Louis Mercer, 514th Quartermaster Truck Company, Red Ball Express Division, Reims Sector. Then he folded the paper and got ready to drive again. The trucks still rolled. The war still needed them. And they still delivered. September 19th, 1944, east of Verdun, France, 0445. Hours. The wind tasted like fire. Not from battle, not yet, but from a ruptured fuel drum burning in a ditch 2 miles back. Smoke trailed into the dawn like a scar across the sky. Another truck lost. Another crew shaken, and the road ahead? Pure hell. Lou Mercer wiped the black soot off his face with a diesel-soaked rag, standing beside the open hood of truck number 274, his most reliable CCKW. Or, it used to be. Now, its engine block steamed like a pressure cooker. Radiator cracked. Oil leaking. The fan belt shredded and curled like a dead snake. Peanut Johnson squatted beside the tire, flashlight between his teeth. "Ain't no roadside fix this time, Sarge. We're cooked." Lou didn't answer. He just stared at the broken truck like it had betrayed him. It hadn't. He'd pushed it too hard. They were 30 miles from the emergency supply point near the Moselle. An entire field hospital was waiting on the load in Lou's truck. Morphine, surgical kits, blood plasma, everything. German shelling had cut rail lines, and airdrops were too risky. This convoy was the only shot, and now half the load was gone. The other half sat useless in a dead truck. Slim Carter came running from the second truck. "Sarge, enemy recon was spotted 10 clicks north. HQ says this route ain't safe past sunrise. We gotta move now or abort." Lou's lips pressed into a thin line. "Unhitch that rear truck," he said. Slim blinked. "You want to double-load it?" "We ain't got a choice. We dump the load, or we deliver it all in one." Peanut stood up. "That much weight'll rip the chassis, Lou. Brakes won't hold on the downhill." Lou met his eyes. "Then we won't stop." 20 minutes later, 2 trucks became one. They stacked and strapped everything. Stretchers, blood bags, oxygen tanks. Into the second CCKW, groaning under the new weight. Peanut bolted down the last crate with strips of canvas and muttered, "This thing's gonna ride like a coffin on roller skates." Lou stepped back and looked at it. No, not a truck anymore. A gamble with wheels. Then, without a word, he climbed into the driver's seat himself. Slim frowned. "You sure you want to drive this one, Sarge?" Lou grunted. "No, but if someone's gonna die in it, better be me." Peanut tried to protest, but Lou cut him off. "You ride point. If the brakes give out, you make sure the MPs know what's coming. Don't look back." Peanut climbed into the lead truck with a clenched jaw. Slim stood frozen. "You ain't bulletproof, Lou," he said softly. "No," Lou replied, gripping the wheel. "But I'm already halfway to bone." The road east of Verdun was a twisting nightmare of broken pavement and hairpin turns carved into the hillside. Trees overhung like gnarled hands. One wrong move, one failed brake, and the whole rig would tumble into the ravine. Lou kept the CCKW's gears low, knuckles white on the wheel. Every bump felt like a punch to the spine. Every squeal of metal made his heart clench. And still, the truck held. 10 miles in, the brakes began to scream. 15 miles in, the steering grew sluggish. By mile 20, the entire left suspension groaned like a dying animal. But Lou did not stop. He drove like a man possessed. Sweat pouring into his eyes, blood pounding in his ears. The weight behind him was pure death, but also pure salvation. It was the kind of cargo that made the difference between funerals and field dressings. Then, the final descent. The depot was just 3 miles away, downhill. Lou downshifted hard. The brakes had nothing left to give. The truck surged, front end wobbling. He gritted his teeth. Hands on the wheel, eyes forward. "Come on, girl," he whispered. "Don't fail me now." The wind roared louder. The trees blurred. The depot came into view. A sprawl of tents, cots, and white-coated medics. Lou yanked the wheel left, grinding the tires through the gravel. The engine howled. The brakes were gone, completely. Ahead, soldiers scattered, waving their arms. Lou leaned on the horn. No time to stop. No time to steer. Just one shot. He pulled hard, aimed between 2 parked jeeps, and slammed the gear into neutral. The CCKW skidded sideways, then slammed into a sandbag wall with a sickening crunch. The windshield spiderwebbed. The engine coughed. And then, silence. Lou opened his eyes. He was bleeding, not badly. Chest sore, ears ringing. Outside, medics were running to the truck. A captain was shouting, "Who's driving this damn thing?" Lou pushed the door open with his boot and stepped down, covered in dust and grease. "Your delivery's here," he croaked. "Try not to drop the blood." 2 hours later, while the field medics tore open the crates he nearly died delivering, Lou sat on a cot with a busted rib and a cracked front tooth. Slim found him there. "You stupid son of a bitch!" Lou smiled through bloodied lips. "Still rolling, barely," Slim muttered. Then, after a pause, "They're talking about putting you in for a citation." "I don't want a damn medal," Lou said. "I want a new fan belt." That night, under a torn blanket, Lou Mercer finally slept. Not because the war was over, but because he'd kept the wheels turning. One more time. September 28, 1944, somewhere near Metz, France, 1740. Hours rain again. Thin, constant, bone-deep. The kind of rain that didn't fall. It just settled on everything. Wet boots, wet rifles, wet lungs. Sergeant Lou Mercer stood under the narrow overhang of a medical tent, clutching a battered canteen of bitter black coffee that tasted like rust and cardboard. His ribs still hurt. His left hand had a tremor he couldn't shake. But he was alive, still standing, still in uniform. Across the field, the remnants of the 514th Quartermaster Truck Company loaded crates into yet another convoy. Their trucks were patched, bruised, and ugly, but still running. Peanut was rewiring a headlamp. Theo was adjusting the tarp on a fuel drum. Slim sat behind the wheel of a new rig, smoking and whistling low. The war was shifting now. Word was, Antwerp had finally been opened to shipping. The trucks would start running shorter routes. Maybe, just maybe, they'd get a week of rest. Lou didn't believe it. Rest wasn't for men like him. 3 days earlier, a staff colonel from Chef, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, had summoned Lou for debriefing. He remembered the officer's name, Colonel Nathan Keller, clean-cut, silver oak leaf on his collar, and a face that looked like it hadn't smiled since 1938. "I've reviewed your unit's record." "Mercer," Keller said, flipping through a file. "Sir, you've logged 43 major runs since August. 38 successful. 5 partially completed due to mechanical loss or enemy action." "Correct." "Unofficially," Keller continued, "your company has driven over 11,000 cumulative miles under fire. You've salvaged 6 abandoned trucks, evacuated wounded under fire, and personally delivered critical medical supplies to forward positions, including this." He pulled out a photo. It showed Lou's wrecked CCKW, half buried in sandbags, smoke still rising. Lou didn't blink. "Your point, sir?" Keller leaned forward. "My point, Sergeant, is that you've proven something uncomfortable. That this truck design, rejected by our own allies, operated by a segregated unit, became the backbone of our logistics. That your men, black men, delivered the war forward." Lou didn't speak. Keller tapped the file. "You understand what that means?" "I understand," Lou said finally, "that if we waited for respect, we'd still be waiting in Alabama." Back in Metz, as dusk fell, a military photographer snapped shots of the 514th loading up. A reporter from Stars and Stripes tried to interview Slim, who waved him off. "They weren't here when we were getting shot at," he grunted. Peanut looked over. "You think they'll tell our story right?" Slim shrugged. "Not our story they're after. Just a headline." Lou watched from a distance. He wasn't angry, just tired, because he already knew the truth. They wouldn't put this in textbooks. They wouldn't talk about the mud, or the racial slurs from MPs, or how many of his men had to fight 2 enemies, the one in the trees and the one in their own army. They wouldn't say that the CCKW truck, the Jimmy, saved more lives than any weapon on the front. They'd write about tanks, and generals, and glory. But not the grease under the fingernails, not the numb hands on the wheel after 30 hours of blackout driving, not the bloodied mechanic laying under a truck during shell fire, fixing a transmission with a spoon and a prayer. But Lou didn't need a newspaper. He had his men, and he had the trucks. One more time. He walked over, slapped the side of a CCKW, same model that got called worthless by the British 4 years ago. Same model now hauling the damn war on its back. You ready for another run? He asked it under his breath. The truck didn't answer, but the engine started on the first try. That was enough. The next morning, the 514th rolled out again. Not because they wanted to, not because anyone thanked them, but because somewhere, forward units needed ammo. Some wounded man needed plasma. Some front line needed fuel to push 1 more mile east. And Lou Mercer? He'd keep rolling until the wheels came off. Because that's what they did. Epilogue, March 1946. Birmingham, Alabama, the war was over. Lou sat on a wooden porch, sipping sweet tea, a newspaper folded in his lap. The headline read, "Allies declare victory, Europe secured." No mention of the 514th. No mention of the Red Ball Express. No mention of the Jimmy. But Lou knew Slim was driving trucks in Chicago. Peanut was fixing engines in a repair shop outside Atlanta. Theo went back to school. On the GI Bill, believe it or not. And Lou? He didn't need his name in history. Because when you've driven through hell, pulled men out of wrecks, patched trucks under fire, and delivered life across 400 miles of death, you don't need applause. You just need to remember that you did it. And you never stopped rolling. The end.